right? You got $500 trillion of liquid financial assets floating around, and 0.1% of that is Bitcoin. So if it gets to be 1%, right, 2%, then it's going up.
Attention Bitcoin investors. Bitcoin, poised to become the next trillion-dollar asset class? That's the question for any investor in this volatile asset class. But Michael Saylor, CEO of MicroStrategy and one of the biggest Bitcoin bulls in the world, believes that the best thing that could happen to Bitcoin is a decrease in volatility and a breakdown of correlations. In this video, we'll explore Saylor's thesis and discuss what it means for the future of Bitcoin. We'll also look at the different types of investors in Bitcoin and how they're approaching this asset class. So if you're interested in learning more about Bitcoin's future, and how to make the most of this investment opportunity, then be sure to watch this video until the end. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on the latest Bitcoin news and analysis. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below.
If we switch the focus just to the crypto industry as opposed to macroeconomics, and the last macroeconomic observation is that, interest rates did go to zero. They stayed at zero for 18 months, then they got jacked up to 500 basis points in 12 months, started breaking the banks. It really crimped the commercial real estate industry, the residential real estate industry. It squeezed the equity markets. And now we're kind of like at this point where it's not clear, do they creep up a little bit or the interest rates to come back in? But I think we're at the end of that aggressive tightening cycle, and at some point they're going to have to loosen monetary policy. So we're poised there. In the crypto industry, I think in general, the question is Bitcoin going to be banned, hacked, or copied? Right? It was the biggest crypto asset 3 years ago, but will it be banned? Will it be hacked? Will it be copied? That's the question for any investor. What happens next? There used to be a lot of Bitcoin skeptics. There were, people, there were the deniers. I talk about them. People that think Bitcoin is tulip bulbs and a Ponzi scheme. Peter Schiff being the most famous. The deniers are pretty much silenced now, right? I mean, they have fallen out of consensus. Bloomberg, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Congress, the SEC, the CFTC, the Treasury, all the central banks of the world, they all kind of acknowledge it's not tulip bulbs. It's a real asset. It's a digital commodity. So the deniers are out of the mainstream. Then you have the skeptics, like Bitcoin is a really good idea, but it's too good idea, so the government's going to ban it. Jamie Dimon said it, you've got other people that said it, Larry Fink once said, it's an index of money laundering. So the skeptics held the day for a while, but I think in the last 24 to 36 months, the skeptics have kind of fallen out of the mainstream as well, because you can't with a straight face go on CNBC and say Bitcoin's going to be banned when they've got the ticker in the lower right corner, and they've got the head of the SEC, the head of the CFTC, and the Secretary of the Treasury, and then Jerome Powell all saying, I think it's going to be around for a while, it's a real thing. So the skeptics don't really have much power. So now if it's an asset, you've got a bunch of investors, and maybe you love it, maybe you hate it. You're like, if you're an investor, you acknowledge it as an asset class, and you can either go long, go short, or trade the volatility. I think that you've seen a lot more investors coming into this space, and for a while they thought it was correlated to risk assets, and so they would short it to hedge their risk portfolio, right? And then they thought it was not correlated or negatively correlated, and so that view has evolved over time. But to your point, the best thing that could happen to Bitcoin is the volatility decreases a bit, but the correlations break down, because if it's an uncorrelated asset and it's a legitimate asset, then most of the financial world is underexposed, right? You've got $500 trillion of liquid financial assets floating around, and 0.1% of that is Bitcoin. So if it gets to be 1%, right, 2%, then it's going up by a factor of 10 or more.
Michael Saylor anticipates a decrease in Bitcoin's volatility as the cryptocurrency gains more adoption and experiences an increase in liquidity within the institutional investor market. Saylor notes that individuals now face a choice to become investors, technocrats, or maximalists, and says reduced volatility and breakdown of correlations would propel Bitcoin's growth and establish it as an uncorrelated and legitimate asset.
I think we'll get the uncorrelated, and how much volatility we get, it's unclear, but as more people adopt it, and as liquidity increases in the mainstream institutional investor market, I think the volatility will decrease. It is decreasing. I mean, the last two investor classes are the technocrats. And this is a set of investors you want. They're the people that think Apple and Google and Amazon and Facebook and Microsoft are really powerful networks. And you can see the big winning stock ideas have been Microsoft, Apple, and Google. And the reason why is because they're more powerful than most nation states. It should be pretty clear to people right now that Apple has 1 billion users, and it would be easier for you to leave the United States of America and pick up your life elsewhere than it would be for you to leave the Apple ecosystem. It's a very interesting idea, but if you're a tech investor, you could get behind that idea, and eventually, just about everybody that got insanely wealthy over the past 20 or 30 years was a technocrat, really, if you think about it. And then eventually you get the Warren Buffetts and you get the Carl Icahns of the world that say, I don't know if I understand it, but it seems like a juggernaut, so I guess I'll buy $10 billion of it. And Warren Buffett made more money on Apple stock than he made in his entire life on everything else you've ever heard of. And he made that money faster. And so the technocrat, kind of wins over the mainstream investor. And Bitcoin is emerging as this dominant digital monetary network, or dominant digital commodity network, or you could call it dominant digital property network. The thing that's most controversial is currency. Currency is very controversial. Every nation state wants to control their own currency. Currency is a medium of exchange, and you could say it's a system of control, right? A medium of exchange, a unit of account, a store of value. But the fourth thing, the system of control, turns out to be really, really important. So digital currency networks are very controversial, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But on the other hand, owning property is not controversial. And if Bitcoin is digital gold, then there is no nation of gold with subpoena power that's going to attack you for taking away its monetary premium. And the same is true if Bitcoin is better investment than real estate. Well, Congress and the Treasury and the FBI and FinCEN, they're not gonna take a lot of issue with the fact that you actually demonetize some commercial real estate by 2%.